Well, hello YouTube. I wanted to do a top 5, 6 cars list and project cars too. I'm not sure exactly how many we'll go through, but I'm thinking 5 or 6. We'll see. I wanted to start with this car because I had to set up the Fanatec shifter for it, to bump shift. And I love this car. It's it's quite different. I am mostly like open wheel cars and road cars, but project cars too kind of showed me that rally could be a lot of fun. And I actually bought this handbrake just because it looks so fun. Watching other people drive this and seeing it, and I'm really glad that I bought the handbrake. This is probably the only car that it really works well with, unfortunately. But it's just so fun to get out there in the dirt and do some laps and stuff. I'm going to try and talk and drive and explain kind of some of why I like this car and why it's fun while I'm driving. That'll be really good. So it's really, really short shifting. The gears are way, way short, and the handbrake is just an awesome throw. It makes you feel like you can drift, which I cannot drift. But it's a fun car. Which I've said how many times. We could start a drinking game based on that. I think if Project Cars wanted to, they could actually create a rally game that would be quite successful based off the way this drives. I don't, if there were more rally games that actually had this kind of handling and this kind of physics, I would totally be playing them. And of course, the virtual reality, because screens suck. But it gives you a different perspective on it, on how these cars drive. Whoa! And that was not a good drive. Like I said, it's hard to talk and drive. What's funny is I drove this before because I've been playing a lot of iRacing, so I thought I'd jump into Project Cars, do a top 5 list, and try and drive again. And everything just drives so different in this than iRacing. So I had to get back into it and get used to its quirks. I just love that handbrake. I am really not driving very well and talking. But anyways, every car in Project Cars 2, I think, has its own characteristics. They all drive differently. They all have a different feel. Which is why I thought I would do a video and go through some of them. I'm going to end here, though, but this one is just a really, really fun car. So we're going to move on to some other cars. I'm not driving and talking very well at this time, but we'll see how the rest of these go. I definitely have to put that on my list because it is really fun to just grab a handbrake, throw the shifter out, and spin all over the place. So for my next cars, you'll probably find that this list is more or less a list of cars that are not that easy to drive. But I think the next one that I will review is actually kind of an easy car to drive, but it has some really fun characteristics. One thing I'd love to talk about is understeer and oversteer and the difference between that. And the cars that I'm going to, basically they all have different spots where they do different things. If a car understeers, basically if you're going straight towards something and you turn the wheel, it's just going to go straight into it. So if a car oversteers, the back end will come around. All cars nowadays are made with essentially understeer. I don't know why. Maybe they think it's safer. You've got more crumple zones. If you spin a car sideways because it oversteers, you know, maybe you'll hit the door. Maybe it's more dangerous for passengers. But every car nowadays is set up to essentially understeer. This car that I'm going to race here, it actually oversteers, but it doesn't oversteer in the way that you would traditionally think of oversteer. It doesn't oversteer in the beginning of the turn. It oversteers at the end of the turn if you're out of the gas. And that's what makes it just a riot to drive. It's very fun. It's very, very slow car. It doesn't have a ton of horsepower. It's a Formula Ford. Essentially, if you're starting out racing, this is what you start with. So it's an easy car to drive. It's not an easy car to drive fast because you have to carry the speed. And that's what this car is all about, is carrying the speed through the turns, keeping that pedal down. And the other thing is, the only way that it really oversteers is if you're off the throttle. So it's a lift-off oversteer at the end of the turn, not at the beginning, at the end, which I think makes it a really fun car because it turns in super snappy. And then at the end, if you're oversteering, you push down the throttle and you just stay right on it. Very responsive car. Super, super fun. Like, I could sit here all day. I could sit here in a series with this car. If they had a series kind of like, you know, kind of like iRacing does, and they made it all Formula Ford, I would totally drive that. Because it would just be fun to try and carry your speed. It's a car that honestly, if you put a bunch of people in, it would be close races. Because there's not much you can do with it. There's not much power there. It's all about carrying that speed, which is kind of what the iRacing Mazda series is all about, is learning how to carry that speed through the turns. Which is why I love it. And I think it's why people start with these cars. I actually drove one of these in real life too. I can't say it was as much fun as this one is, because you couldn't really push it on the course. And the one that I drove had a rear wing, so this doesn't have any downforce on that back end, and I think that's part of why it oversteers so much at the end of the turns. But like I said, it's just a blast to drive. If you're not quite set up right in a corner, and I didn't carry enough speed there at all, if you're not set up quite right for a corner, you went into it too fast, or you don't think you're going to make it out, you can lift off, you can oversteer it, and then slap the throttle down, and it will catch. And then you can just make it right through the rest of the corner, which I think is hilariously fun. And again, it's part of the reason why I like project cars. These cars are all very, very unique, very different. They all handle differently. They do different things really well. So anyways, that's kind of my second pick for this. I thought I would just do this one really quick because it's such an easy car to drive. Again, second pick. I showed you a favorite screen. Just know my favorites are not all coming from that, but this one is, and one other one, which I think we'll go to now. So that's definitely my second pick. If you're new to it and you want to get into a car that's not super intimidating, it's fun to drive, try this car. It might make you change your mind about project cars too, completely, right there. The Formula R, but really it's a Formula Ford. So my next car that I'm going to pick is also going to come from my favorites, and that is this Nissan GTR. It's totally different than the Formula Rookie. This car is not a beginner car. It's not an easy car to drive. It oversteers like you wouldn't believe, and that's actually what makes it really, really fun. It makes you feel like, hey, I could actually probably drift. Again, it's another car kind of like the rally car where it makes you feel like you can drift, but I can't drift. So I might spin out quite a bit with this. Who knows? We'll see. All these cars too, I am not changing anything about the tuning setups. We're just running in the loose setup, I think, on this one. Same with the last one. Because why run any other way? So you can see right there, I have a lot of lift-off oversteer. And it's at the beginning of the turn. It's not at the end. Because at the end, you're just trying to accelerate out of it. This is a car that you cannot trail brake into turns. You trail brake it, you're going to spin it around. So you have to prepare. You have to come in slower and then do your turning. And again, if you're not quite lined up, go ahead, let off that throttle and steer it in. Just know that it's going to pivot a lot. But again, that kind of is what makes it fun. Ooh, I went into that really, really hot. Way late. Totally missed my apex, I know. So, the thing I've been trying to get used to with this car is, like, I can't tell if it's lift-off oversteer or if it's actually on the throttle oversteer. It's just kind of one of these weird cars that does all kinds of weird things to you. And sometimes it comes out good. Sometimes it comes out really, really bad and you end up spinning circles. If you want to pretend like you know how to drift, this is probably the car to do it with too. Right? Because I can hang it out and then I can start throttling it up. Whoa, nope. Throttled up too much. So yeah, it's a fun car. Not the easiest to drive, but kind of why it's on my list. And I was drifting this around earlier so much better than I'm doing now. Again, trying to talk, concentrate, and drive, really, really hard to do. It also kind of throws you off because it's right-hand drive. So used to left-hand drive. I was overcooking this corner big time earlier today. Thought I'd try and get in a nice corner for you, see if I could drift it around. This first corner seems to be always the one that I can really push it out a lot further in. Then you just ease back on it. Kind of hold it. There we go. That was a nice slide the whole time. And really that was on throttle, drifting, just kind of pushing that tail end out. Ease into the throttle. Super, super easing into it so that I'm not overcooking the corner. Really fun car. Again, not a car that I would suggest for any beginner to try and tame, because it will just frustrate you to no end and you'll be like, this just sucks. So this is definitely my number 3 pick. And then from here we're going to go kind of a whole different direction. These next cars are not on my favorites list. I haven't even drove them today, so we'll see how I drive them. But the next car I'm going to pick is a Lotus. And again, it's a really, really fun car for oversteering. And this one is total lift-off oversteer. I could probably just make a list of Fords, because at this point, even this is a Ford engine. But it's a really, really, really unique car. It's vintage. It's hilarious to drive. It wobbles all over the place. I love the center mirror and again, your right-hand drive. Really kind of an odd spot. And look at those fenders. Just big old bubbles sitting out in front of you. It blows my mind that people used to drive these so fast. You know, this was what we drive. And if I lift off, oversteer, hit the throttle, and you could feel it like just rocking. So when you rock it back, you got traction, you let it go, and the whole back end will just come around. And that's kind of what makes it fun. It's not a car that I would go in and be like, hey, let's do a bunch of races and throw this in a lobby. See, but It's a fun car to just come out here, lift off the throttle, let the tail whip. Oh, I understeered like crazy. And that's the other fun thing is like you go into a corner too fast with this, it understeers. You go into it just right, it oversteers. It's not an easy car to drive. It's hilariously fun just to get that back end out, feel it kind of floating and loose around the corners. I'm not even trying to drive it fast at this point. Oh, understeer, understeer, understeer. So that's kind of why it's on the list, because it's a riot to come in here and try and throw it around a corner. You could pretend like you can drift with this car too. It would be one that you could tell your friends, yeah, I know how to drift, watch this, and just let go of the throttle and let the whole back end hang out, come around the corner. Oh, right through the tires. You never know where that front end's going to come around. And again, that's what makes it fun, makes it a riot. Just to try to get around a course. This is a beautiful course, by the way, to play with cars like this that kind of float around and do their own thing. I think it'd be awesome to see vintage racing. Like, if they had vintage racing anywhere that I could go watch, it would just be a spectacle to see these things come flying around these corners. And I'm sure there's probably not that many in existence anymore. Kind of trail brake it in to get it to turn. Oh, I didn't get it to turn enough. So yeah, these older cars with the suspension that's a little goofy, you can do a lot of fun stuff with it. I definitely, back there, I had a lot of speed, and I didn't brake into the turn. So it just kind of understeers. The reason I like these kind of cars is it teaches you how to balance a car that's inherently like just not set up to really go fast, but it allows you to learn how to balance a car on the edge, balance it with trail braking or not trail braking, with oversteer or not oversteering, how to hit the throttle at the right time. And it's not super intimidating in that it's not a super fast car. If I was in a fast car that was doing this, it would be super intimidating. But because this car is older and slower, it's not as intimidating. And you could see the suspension. You could visually see the car dipping and coming back, which is another kind of hilarious thing about it. So you get the sense of weight with it, and the sense of where it's swinging and how the front end's going to grip or not, which is why I like it. So even though it's a hard car to drive, I don't think it's unapproachable for people that are new. Maybe it's a good car for somebody to understand, you know, how does a car oversteer? How does a car understeer? This is one of those cars that if you're trail braking it in, it's gonna oversteer, and you know it's gonna oversteer. And so you can get a sense of what that feels like, how to control that, how to handle that, how to shift that weight and hold it onto a line. So I think in that sense, it's probably like maybe it is a good car for beginners, because it really shows you how to shift that weight and what that weight shift does. Oh, I totally missed that. I've been missing that apex the whole time. Anyways, I think I'm going to quit there, and we're going to go to my last pick. Or my last two picks. I haven't decided yet. But again, fun car. The Lotus, definitely one of my top cars. I didn't even drive this today. Same with these other cars that I'm going to show you. Definitely haven't drove this one in a long time. I'm trying to think if it's the Formula A. Yeah. So this car will do anything and everything all over the place. Again, it's kind of like the Lotus, but it isn't. You cannot trail brake this into turns. It will oversteer and spit you out of the other end. You get on the throttle too much, it'll oversteer at the end. You get on the throttle too much at the beginning, it'll understeer. But you have to carry your throttle throughout the entire turn. So you have to brake before the turn and carry your speed throughout the entire turn. I never understood how bad liftoff oversteer was until driving one of these. Whew, just listen to that engine too. Oh my God. So of course I've got the curves and stuff set up. I probably won't use that for this. This car is just amazing too. The speed you can carry throughout everything. And I'm going to have to get used to that, because the one thing that I've noticed with these cars is if you brake in your regular spot, you're dead stopped before your turn. It's so wild how much speed and how fast you can come up to these turns, how late you can brake, how hard you can go through them. It's a whole adjustment that you have to get used to. And again, it's not a car that you can go into the turn with much brakes. So you almost have to be like, okay, I'm going to brake now, and then I'm going to turn after this at this point. If you get used to these cars and you go out into a lobby and try and multiplayer race, it's funny how slow people will be behind you, because you have to adjust. It is an adjustment with this. Oh, remember how I said lift off oversteer? There you go. It's a mindset to drive this. And I am just dog slow today with it. You really have to have all your lines 100% on the dot for it. I haven't drove this in a long time. I haven't drove anything like this in a long time. So I get for iRacing for so much time. So I am really sucking it up with this car right now. I know I am. It would probably take me at least, 10 or 15 laps just to get back into the mentality of how to drive one of these things, because, again, brake so late, and again, I was almost stopped there. They rev forever. I don't envy people that drive these. I mean, I do envy them, but I don't, because it's got to be a job. All the G-forces coming around these corners so fast. Trying to just think as quickly as possible. I mean, the response that you have to drive one of these has to be insane. The brake pedals are like 80, 90 pounds, so you have to use your whole entire weight to brake with them. And you have to just be so fast on your responses. Which is why it's on my list, because this is a car that it's fun to drive. You can hop in it and put in sucky lap times like I'm doing. It keeps you on your toes all the time. Really, really fun car. If you're going against AI in this car, you're going to see how bad you suck actually carrying speed through turns, which kind of goes back to the Formula Ford. This car, you could carry so much more speed than I'm doing. But it's still a fun car just to throw around a few laps and see what you can do with it. And if you really want a challenge, take one of these through the Nürburgring. It's it kind of shows how crazy those people are and how good they are. The YouTube videos where you see people doing 5-minute Nürburgring laps, and then you go into it and you're like, what? How in the world? And of course I'm not talking Nürburgring, I'm talking the whole Nürburgring. You know, there's people out there that could probably throw this around that thing in 5 minutes. Hey, I finally got my apex. Probably high fives, but still, just the ability that people have driving in this simulator games just kind of blows my mind. I let off the throttle there. Did it on purpose because I wasn't turning enough, and I thought maybe I could catch it. I couldn't. Anyways, that's kind of my top list. I think one other car that I would probably throw on this list, just an honorable mention, just because I've made this list almost like, here's the hardest cars to drive, but they're fun. I guess my honorable mention would have to be this Lotus, another Lotus. And of course, it's a totally insane car. 1,300 horsepower. Turbo, when it kicks on, will kick you sideways every single time. And that's kind of what's fun about it, is it's undrivable, but yet it's kind of drivable. And I say that, and I'll probably spin out with it in the first few seconds. We'll see. But when that turbo kicks, you can just use your big toe and kind of go, okay, I know where I'm at. And what's funny is I'm driving the stable version of this, and I'll probably still kick it out. So as soon as this turbo winds, okay, maybe not. I was gonna say, as soon as the turbo winds, it's just gonna kick, and it's not. But I am driving it with my big toe, and I'm not just slapping it down. Oh, I totally missed a billion shifts there. It's unbelievable that this car was even made. 1,300 horsepower. With the turbo. So this would be my honorable mention. Really, really, really fun car. I think it's actually a little bit easier to drive than that last one, to be honest. So definitely an honorable mention. That's what I was talking about, that turbo kick. If you're at all like have any turn, or your wheels aren't straight at all, as soon as that turbo kicks, it's just gonna go sideways. And you have to love a car that's manual. I actually kind of wish I had a manual car. Because learning how to drive a manual in this game has made me understand how to drive right. What's funny is I've had a manual most of my life. I've driven manual cars, but I've never had to throttle blip on the way down in a car until I started playing this game and started realizing, hey, if I want to downshift correctly, I've got to throttle blip, or that back end's just going to kick out. So I would love to get a manual car again and try and do that in real life. Oh, this car is beautiful. Anyways, that's my list. I don't know if that ended up being top 5, top 6, probably closer. Yeah, probably closer to 6, and an honorable mention. Anyways, let me know what your favorite cars are in the game, and I'll give them a try.